Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. How do you like the new studio? As I've mentioned in the past, we're doing a lot of work around the house, and so I am at a location in our local forest preserve. There's obviously a road not too far from here, but it is what it is. Anyway, I have actually bought a new camera, a new compact camera. There's times when I don't want to carry my Lumix Micro Four Thirds equipment. I just don't want to have them much on me. As it happens, I found on eBay a refurbished copy of the ZS100, Lumix ZS100, and also included free returns, so there wasn't a lot of risk in trying it. As a lot of people know, the Lumix ZS100 is one of Panasonic's entries in the 1-inch sensor compact, and this one has a 25 to 250 millimeter equivalent focal length lens. So when this came out back in 2016, this was over $700. You can still get them new for around $500, but I've always been rather skeptical of long-range zooms, like this 10x zoom on here. So I was thinking, you know, I'd check it out and see what the quality was like, and if it wasn't up to snuff, I could always return it or sell it, depending on how long I keep it. But I've actually been pleasantly surprised. This is actually capable of some pretty nice results. Even at the long telephoto range, I've got some pretty nice photos. One thing, again, copy variation, because you'll see people online saying they've seen this and at the long end the lens is soft. Just goes to what I always say is thoroughly test a camera when you buy it, or a lens when you buy it. Make sure. We're going to pause right now for our local air traffic coming in and out of O'Hare Airport. So yeah, I'm going to show some images. What I found is this one, the particular copy, is fine at the long end. In fact, surprisingly good. The other downside is not a terribly fast lens. It's f2.8 at the 25 millimeter equivalent and f5.9 at the 250 millimeter equivalent. So what I have found is the auto ISO does a pretty good job of trying to keep the ISO down. And I've been using intelligent ISO a lot. Intelligent ISO on Lumix cameras actually will detect movement in the frame, and if it detects movement, it will ramp the ISO up to try and freeze that movement as much as possible. It's not going to work when a bird flies with your frame. It's not that fast, but it overall is not bad. Image quality wise, you know, I find the images are pleasant, the color is pleasant, the skin tones are you know, very similar to what you'd find in other 2016 vintage Lumix cameras like the GX85, the G85. They're not quite to where the latest Lumix cameras are, such as the G95 and G9, and I imagine the GH5 Mark II and GH6. I think those have somewhat better skin tones, but frankly, it's really good enough. So right now I'm recording on my iPhone. I'm going to switch to recording on this. Obviously there's no microphone input on this camera, so sound's going to be a little iffy, but I have come up with a thought about how to get around that. And I am using the internal mic on my iPhone. So okay, now switch to the ZS100, and we're recording with the internal microphone. And you'll notice that I have the crop is tighter. It's because I was using the ultra-wide lens to film myself on my phone. And now with the internal lens, the widest it goes is 24 millimeter equivalent, whereas ultra wide in my phone is 13 millimeter equivalent. So one of the criticisms of this camera, and most cameras with built-in microphones, is that the sound quality is not that great. So you can hear now, it's probably valid. It's unfortunate they didn't put a mic input on this camera, but you know, it's all a trade-off, you know, trying to keep the cost down. But I've come up with a thought and an idea of how to get around that if you're doing, you know, this sort of a video where you're filming yourself, and that is going to your voice memo on your phone and recording the voice memo. So this is what I'm doing now. So we're going to switch over to the audio that's coming off this phone's voice memo, and since it's closer to me, and plus iPhones and I'm sure the competitive phones, it had pretty good sound quality with the internal mic. So we'll see if this is a workaround. There's some other thoughts about the camera. The lens is not perfect. It's better than I would have expected it to be given the zoom range. As I've said, I'm always a little leery about long range zooms, but you know, I've taken some pretty nice images with it. Another lens issue that I've noticed is I took some photos of you know, the woods here going up into the canopy, and at wide angle at 12 millimeters there's coma in the corners, and those are little, you look at the light filtering through the leaves, there's these little triangular sort of starry triangular artifacts in the corners, and actually around the edges too, at those those highlights of the light coming through the leaves. So that's coma. And actually the Lumix 20 millimeter f1.7 actually has some coma in the corners wide open. I discovered that while doing some astrophotography with it at the south rim of the Grand Canyon a few years back. But you know, with a range like this, there's just always going to be trade-offs. Obviously, the lens is good enough for Leica to let Panasonic put the Leica badge on it. But again, with an extended range zoom, there's always going to be some trade-offs. And to be honest with you, if you printed something with coma in it like that, yeah, somebody who's into optics, they're going to look at it and go, "Oh, that's coma." A lot of people are just going to go, "Oh, that's kind of a cool effect." So it all depends on your audience and how close you're looking at the print. I also did some images, stopped it down to f4 and f5.6 to see how well that's handled. So I actually did that today. So we'll take a look at that when I get back home. But all in all, I have been very pleased with this camera. And if you're a Lumix shooter, you've got a menu system that you're going to know right off the bat. I mean, it's lacking the latest niceties like the My menu, where you can actually set up a section with your most frequent choices. But and the other thing is that the ISO is buried in the quick menu, so you could always remap that to one of the buttons on the camera if you want to. Most of the time with a camera like this, I'm going to use automatic ISO or intelligent ISO. I mean, there's times when I might want to override that. What you can do is have the quick menu set so that when you go in, that's the first choice. So you can do that. My thoughts on this camera is that if you're somebody who wants to use more than your phone, and you want image quality, especially at the telephoto end, because from what I've seen, modern phones, especially Apple, once you get past on an Apple phone, once you get past 2.5 or 3x zoom, you're into digital zoom territory. The Samsungs have longer reach, but I don't think that those telephoto images look that great. Even on the phones that have an optical zoom that say goes out to 10x, it's going to be much better on this camera. Let's wait for this jet to pass. The other thing is, this is a perfect travel camera. I mean, if you want to travel light, you don't want to take a lot of equipment, this camera, you'll come back from your trips with pretty darn nice images. And right now I have it mounted on my Slick Pro 1 lightweight tripod that I've had for a couple decades now. And that's not a lot of weight. You could always take a Gorilla Pod and mount it on something like that. The other thought that I have is that given this is a slow lens, you could pair it with a camera like the Lumix ZS100, which has a much faster lens. It's f1.4 at the wide end and f2.8 at the wide end is 12 millimeters. The long end, I think, is 75 millimeters. So I had that thought that, you know, it would be kind of cool to maybe, if you're just traveling, you don't want to take interchangeable lens cameras, you could take two bodies, the LX100, the ZS100. They use the same battery, so you're set there. If you have a GX85 or a GX9, it uses the same battery as those cameras. So whether it's the only camera you take, or you take it as in addition to something else, you know, if I were traveling with my G9 or my G95 and lenses, I would still throw this in the bag for those times you want to walk out and don't want to be carrying a big system. So it's a good little camera. Now I've done a little bit of customization on it because another criticism is it's slippery and it's got a little bit of a grip ridge in front as a grip, but it's pretty slippery. I found online these things called dragon grips, and they're little adhesive pads that have a texture, almost like a leatherette texture to it. And so I've put that on my my ZS100, and it makes a huge amount of difference. So as you can see in these pictures I'm showing. I think that's it for today. So I'm gonna show some images that I've taken over the past week that I've gotten with this camera, including some street photography. Street photography, it's a tiny, unobtrusive camera. So we had an event in downtown Oak Park Thursday night. I had one person kind of giving me the stink eye about it. But other than that, nobody paid attention to me. Whereas if I go even with my G95 and prime lenses, you know, generally somebody will look at me. I always get asked, do you work for the local paper? And nope, don't do that. Sometimes I let them use some photos. They're a nonprofit organization. Here are some images. Let me know what you think. If this was helpful, useful to you, hit like, hit the little bell icon to be notified when I have a new video up. And if you're a subscriber, I really appreciate it. It's a big help to me. It's kind of a lot of fun. I'm actually having a lot of fun doing this. So hopefully I can keep it up and keep some videos coming. But I am going to go now and enjoy the rest of my walk out here in Thatcher Woods. Get this bird over here. That is a house wren. You can hear that. See. But without further ado, here are the images. Thanks for watching. I'm Todd Banner. I'll see you next time.